when I was an art assistant a long time ago, one of the senior guys caught me like, I can't remember. I was like doing an illustration. I was trying to paint a doorknob. And he was like, dude, why are you spending so much time on that doorknob? I was like, well, I got to get it to look right. He's like, yeah, but do you want to be hired for your ability to paint doorknobs? And I thought, oh my God, yeah, no, I don't.
All right, we are back for the Pencil Kings podcast. I hope you guys have been listening and enjoying it. If you want to drop me a line, I'd love to hear from you. Today, we're talking to Josh Viers. Man, totally blown away. As soon as you go to his website, conceptbyjosh.com, your jaw is just going to hit the floor when you see this picture of, I believe it's a TIE bomber, and there's like a Sith standing in front of it, and it's dusty, and these guys are just waiting to intercept him. I don't know what the story is behind this picture, but you could make up your own story and go there and see it. If you're at a computer while you're listening to this, it's awesome. And today we're going to talk about how Josh is starting his new company, transitioning into that. When I was a production artist, I talked to a lot of people who did want to go out on their own, but weren't quite sure what the next steps were to do that. So welcome to the call, Josh. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Just really stoked to be on the show, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. When I loaded up this picture, I was like, oh, okay, I'm feeling pumped. It's been a long day, but I'm feeling pumped. And so just to kick things off, why don't you've got a really impressive resume. Why don't you tell people about some of the highlights or some of the things that you're proud of? It doesn't have to be maybe the most brand name projects, but some of the things that you've done that you're really proud of in your career.
It's funny. I think, at least the work I'm most proud of, just to jump right into it, is work that I did while I was at 2K Games in Novato. And I was working on it was one iteration of the XCOM game. And I think it was XCOM The Bureau is what it ended up being called. But anyway, I had a really great art director, Andrew James, who let me work in a style that I really like to work in. So I was just really kind of pretending like I was working on an animated feature at Pixar and just doing the kind of work that I would imagine I would have done if I had gotten to work there. And man, at the time, it was work that I don't know, I'm still pretty proud of. It just, you can tell I was in a happy place and enjoying my work just by looking at it,
That's interesting. Do you feel that when you look at other artists' work that you can, like a body of their work, that you could tell when they were happy?
Sometimes. It's getting harder now that people produce such moody stuff and they use a lot of 3D, but I think you can definitely see if the person, if there's like a lot of heavy shadows and a really stark image, that they probably weren't happy at the time, but there's a lot of sunshine and green grass and leaping unicorns, then they were probably pretty happy about life at that time,
Definitely the details. It's the unicorns. If you see a unicorn, then for sure.
Obvious, but I had to throw it in.
I think that's a really interesting point. I was talking. I got to meet. I'm always in awe when I get to meet my kind of like childhood art heroes, and I met one of them, and I was telling him about his original portfolio that I was so inspired by, and he was so embarrassed that somebody actually remembered this portfolio from so long ago. And he got to talking about how he was excited about the game that he was working on because it allowed him to explore like the colorful parts that you were just talking about, as well as the dark parts. So it had a whole range, whereas a lot of the games and the films that you see, they're sort of like set in this one kind of like, I don't know, monotone, like gritty, I don't know, like Gears of War is a perfect example. I would think that, there's just a certain style that often you're just trapped in this certain mode, and the happiness doesn't have room to breathe really in that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think that, and it's probably harder, I think, with a game to craft like a full story the way you would in a movie, but even like really dark shows like True Detective, is just super dark, but there's some levity in there and there are really funny moments. And I think maybe it's harder to have that moment of pure spontaneity that alleviates the darkness, or to have that image that comes out of nowhere that's really bright, but I totally agree. I think it's something that a lot of games kind of can suffer from, as being kind of a one note, like one tone throughout the whole experience, you know?
Definitely. Let's kind of get into the talking about your new business that you've started. How long have you been thinking about the last 5 years you were kind of thinking about it and then finally made the decision that you were going to take the first step, or how did it work out?
If I'm being totally honest with myself, I probably considered it for the first time like a couple of years ago. I was having lunch with a couple of other Bay Area guys who had been freelancing for a while, and they've really been amazingly successful. They've made names for themselves and they've worked on these really cool TV shows and movies, but I was afraid to take the risk. It's hard to leave that 9 to 5 gig where every 2 weeks you get money deposited into your bank account, regardless of how busy work was, you know? When you actually you're thinking about taking that leap, for me, it was pretty scary, you know, because it's like, Jesus, I'm going to be paying for my own healthcare. You know, I mean, obviously I'm here in the States where that's a huge concern, but it's scary. And so, yeah, I think I was really stewing on it for probably 2 years, but I really kind of started to become more serious about it probably about 7 or 8 months ago.
And do you think, like, just to dive a little bit deeper, do you think if the money problem was taken off the table, do you think there was other mindset issues or things that you weren't sure of that were holding you back?
Wow, that's a good question. Yeah, I think there's still that, oh God, am I good enough? You know, like will
Really?
people, yeah, seriously. I think everyone, you know, if you're in a job and you're at this company, you're kind of insulated in many ways from the real world and kind of really taking risks, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to put yourself out there. And so, yeah, I think if money weren't an issue, then it'd be like, well, geez, am I just going to be, you know, storyboarding spaghetti commercials, or are people going to want me to work on cool sci-fi stuff? I don't know.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that would even come into play, but I can see what you mean about being isolated in the studio. It's almost like going out and swimming in the ocean when you can't see the bottom of the ocean. You're sort of like, whoa, I'm in it now. Like anything could happen at this point.
No, actually, that's an excellent analogy. It's like, you know, I've been in a swimming pool for all my life. I know I can swim, so I'm fine on the deep end, but I can always go back to the shallow end where I'll be okay. Whereas if you're just going to drop me in the middle of the ocean, yeah, I know I can swim, but there is no shallow end to escape to, you know, which makes me sound like a total coward. But, you know, it's true. And I think that's an excellent analogy. You know you can swim, so just get out there, you know?
When I started my first game company, I was never concerned with sales. And I think that that's something that a lot of people should be concerned with. And so I want to ask you, like, leading up to starting your own company, is that something that you were concerned about? I know that some people can just hop into freelancing and they've got the network to support them. Other people don't have the network. Was the sales problem something that you considered, or did you just kind of jump into it blindly like I did? And I was so dumb. I didn't even worry about sales. I just like, we're going to be awesome. So that's all we got to do. and, you know, it's ridiculous, but that's how we thought. And I was 22 at the time. So, you know, got to learn here and there.
Maybe I have the advantage of waiting until I was 38 to take a risk. You know, I was pretty methodical about it. I was at a mobile game company, Kixeye, here in San Francisco. And I'd been thinking about it for a while. And so I didn't really leave that job until I knew that I had some work lined up. It was like, all right, well, I've got a few weeks, maybe even a month's worth of work, and I think I can get more work after that. I can put in my 2 weeks and get ready to go. So I wish I could say I just quit and left an hour later, but I was a little bit more methodical about it. And I made sure I had some clients kind of ready to go before I gave them my notice.
Did you also give yourself like some kind of a runway? Like I've recommended to other people who are starting businesses like 18 months. If you don't have 18 months of savings where you can sort of like try and fail and learn, maybe you should, save a little harder or stick at your 9 to 5 a little bit longer and just freelance in your spare time. Did you have a runway like that?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, and I think that's really, really good advice. I mean, the money that I have saved is meant to go towards buying a house someday, but it's nice to know that I have savings set aside that I can live off of if I don't have work, and that way, when I don't have work, I'm not feeling panicked, like, oh my God, how am I going to pay rent or pay my bills? So I think definitely at least having a year's worth of money put away. So you say like, all right, if I live lean, I can live off of this for a year or like you said, maybe even 18 months. I think that's key for your confidence and just knowing that you're going to be okay for a little bit and it'll help.
Awesome. Glad that you have some savings, and I like how you expanded on a little bit about the confidence thing, because when you get into that panic mode, it's all of a sudden your creativity can just disappear, and your close relationships that are really important start to evaporate. There's just so much pressure associated with money. So if you can alleviate that, it's really good. So you give your 2 weeks notice. You've got a month and a bit of contracts lined up. What happens then? Like, are you putting together a website? Are you trying to get out to conferences or hitting the phones? How do the first steps look like in your case?
The first steps are definitely doing personal work, whatever it is that you do. If you're a 3D modeler or you're an animator or you're a concept guy, it's having just a whole bunch of personal work. I don't know, a half dozen images that you can show to anybody you want, and you're not restricted by NDA or anything. So you can say, this is what I'm capable of right now. Because I think especially for concept guys, if we're the first people on a project, by the time the project is released and we can show the work, that artwork is 2 years old. And that's where I was 2 years ago with my skills. So, you got to be willing to put in that extra time in your spare time to get personal work done, which I think a lot of people are already doing, and have that website with that recent work all ready to go, which is what I did my best to do, and then, then you've got a website that you can email to people and say, hey, I'm starting my own thing. I'm going to be free. Here's my work, and this is what I'm capable of. For me, that was the biggest enabler, that I was able to just kind of go ahead and do it because I had good work, that I wasn't feel like I was promising people what I could do or telling them I have the secret work I can't show them. I have work. I say, look, this is it. Can you hire me? And that made a huge difference.
I like how you said 6 as the number. And one of the recent episodes, we were talking about like how big should your portfolio be? And I feel like the thing that you want to do is like, okay, I need to show them I'm awesome. So what does awesome means? Like 18 to 24 image. I don't know why, but that's the number that would come to mind. But it's like, no, 6 extremely focused pieces. That's enough. I also like the idea that where your skills are at now is completely different than the public work that's shown from the concept artwork that you did, for whatever game or movie project.
Totally. Definitely having 6 really recent images, and I would say at least 10 images that you say, this is the best I can do, and you're really proud of those 10 images, then I think you're in a really good spot,
And as a concept artist, when you're creating these new images for your portfolio, are you going broad? Are you trying to hit all different styles? Are you focusing in and saying like, no, I'm all about technical execution. That's what I'm going to show. Because I feel like there is thought that should be put into these. It's not just something that you do willy-nilly.
Oh, yeah, definitely. When I was an art assistant a long time ago, one of the senior guys caught me like, I can't remember. I was like doing an illustration. I was trying to paint a doorknob. And he was like, dude, why are you spending so much time on that doorknob? I was like, well, I got to get it to look right. He's like, yeah, but do you want to be hired for your ability to paint doorknobs? And I thought, oh my God, yeah, no, I don't. And so then I've adopted that attitude like for everything I do. And so then it becomes really pretty easy. It's like, well, what kind of work do I really want to do? For instance, that Star Wars fan art that made me famous on the internet for like 2 minutes was I thought, man, I would just love to work on Star Wars. And I thought, well, fuck it. Nobody's preventing me from working on it. I can just do the work that I would want to do. And I think that's the best advice I can give. If you want to do sci-fi work, if you want to design robots, then design robots in your spare time and become the best robot designer that you know. And hopefully that will be the kind of work that you get at some point, or if you love unicorns prancing through fields, then just illustrate them until you can't do it anymore. And you'll probably be known as the prancing unicorn guy, and you'll get work on that prancing unicorn project.
And I guess there's a follow-up question here. Do you consciously think about what projects are going on or what studios are doing what kind of work? And let's say we talked about Gears of War earlier, so you love Gears of War, and so that's what you're going to tailor your project to? Or do you go more to where it's going to sound cheesy, but to where your heart leads you? And so your heart is more towards Star Wars. So you go for Star Wars, but you're not really sure what Star Wars projects are happening. I mean, Star Wars might be a bad example, but let's say somebody's loves doing trippy, acid-induced, weird color concept art, and that's their thing. I would feel like I wouldn't want to advocate them to go down that road because it seems such a narrow path, but maybe I'm wrong. I haven't been in the situation myself.
That's a good point. If you want to be someone who's hired to work on someone else's gig, you got to be cognizant of, is this something that could apply to another project? So if you want to do this kind of weird, trippy, really kind of fantastic, not grounded artwork, you're taking more of a risk, right? Like, what are the odds that someone's going to hire me to do this exact thing that's in my head? Whereas if you're a little more general, I really love hard surface science fiction stuff, then it's a little bit safer, but you can still explore your own ideas, Unless you want to be a fine artist and try and sell your work in a gallery, then you still have to be mindful of like what's in theaters, what's coming out on consoles, and just kind of be aware of that. Doesn't mean you have to be literally designing stuff for Gears of War, like number 4 or 5 or whatever. But I think it does mean that you got to be a little more realistic,
I have something more, something none of your dry as dust professors and routine-ridden doctors have. Love, devotion, passion.
I've started doing coaching calls for people, and this question comes up quite a lot. There's younger artists or like newer artists, and they're concerned with their style. They're like, you know what? I just can't find my style. And I feel like, that's not something that you should really be worried about. It's something that just happens over time, and that instead you should be looking at what is exciting to you or what do you enjoy doing and keep moving towards that. But I'm sure you've heard this from people who look up to your artwork. But what do you have to say to these people that are worried about style in their work?
Yeah, I also, as a younger guy, really worried like, oh man, when am I going to find my voice? This is awful. I'm just ripping people off. You hit the nail on the head. It's your style will come to you, and odds are it'll come to you when you're least expecting it. It's going to be when you're slammed for time and you're working as fast as you can, and you're forced to innovate with your process and mix things up just to hit deadlines. And before you know it, you're making decisions that have been informed by your past experiences. But before you know it, this style will come out on its own. People listening will probably think, well, yeah, that's great, but I still don't have my voice. I don't know what that is. It'll happen. Just keep working and keep being inspired. And next thing you know, if you love Sid Mead's designs, like his luxury stuff from the 70s and 80s, and you've been staring at it, you might then see that influence later on, but with your own voice, because you're not him. You're making your own decisions. And I think it's just something that you have to try to relax and let it come on its own, because that's the only way it happens.
I love that the way that you explain it is so unintentional. That it happens when you least expect it, and it happens out of necessity, and it happens due to restrictions. These situations are not what people would think when their style would come. You think that style comes from just sitting there and staring and thinking a lot about what you're trying to do, and then but in reality it's just like, no, work faster, think less, keep going, keep pushing, and just have faith. And then one day you'll just look at your art and be like, huh,
Yeah.
I have a style. Or people will start to comment and be like, wow, that's really a blank, whatever that blank style is. I remember for me, it's like, wow, that looks kind of like Tim Burton stuff, but more cartoony. And it's like, oh, cool. I guess that was, the elements of a style in my early work. But it just happens. Don't worry about it.
It's weird because people, they do say, yeah, I really love your style. I love that way that you work. Sometimes I go back to my work and I think like, well, what are they talking about? You don't even see it yourself because you've been head down working, trying to hit that deadline. And it's not until you come up for air and talk to somebody and they say that they like your style. So you may not even realize it yourself that you have a style until somebody tells you that, like you just said, I like your kind of more whimsical Tim Burton style. And you think, huh, maybe I do have a style,
So you gave your 2 weeks notice, you got your pieces done, you got your website up. Now the next step is to go and design a logo and get business card printed and no? what do you do next?
Yeah, I think don't waste your time on the logo, unless you're a graphic designer, then you better have the most badass logo I've ever seen. The tough part then comes once you have your artwork and you've got your website up and running. Sure, you can get the business cards, but I would save your money. And that's when you cold call people, then that's when you send the email to the guy that doesn't know who you are, but just might have a spare moment on a Sunday evening, and that is kind of the scarier part, I think, than anything else, than setting up the website or doing your own work, is the cold calls, being willing to put yourself in a place where you might get rejected. And it's doing some snooping. For instance, at one point I was just really dying to work. Well, I still am dying to work on a David Fincher movie. And so I signed up for a free 30-day IMDb Pro trial. And I find out who his agency is, right, that represents him. And which sounds just insane, right? He's not going to return the phone call of just some random artist. But I do think you've got to be willing to take that risk and do that snooping and find that information and try it. Because what the hell? I mean, all they're going to do is say, no, thank you, at the worst, as long as you're not totally crazy, And so I think the cold calling and being willing to do your research is really bigger than anything.
I love it. And I know how hard cold calling is. A lot of us artists are natural introverts. And, the idea of cold calling, especially now in technology and it's way easier. Couldn't you just tweet them or text them or something? It's like, no, you actually have to dial that number and feel the sweat. And I remember for me, I went through a period of cold calling. I could explain it as like somebody that took one of those old metal antennas from the 80s or 90s, and they were like slowly inserting it into my back shoulder. Like when I was dialing the number, that's the pain that I felt. Because I resist. It's crazy. I know it's crazy, but this is literally what I felt. And I had to like examine this mindset issue and kind of like reframe it so that I could call kind of effortlessly. Because like you said, the worst they can say is no. It's not like they're going to kick down your door and punch you in the face and take your phone and be like, never call this number again, and throw it on the phone and shame on you. That doesn't really happen.
No, it doesn't. And I think most people were probably in your position at one point, or they've hired an assistant who's this patient, nice person who's going to be totally respectful. And I think it sounds trite, but it's practice. So don't call David Fincher the first time you're trying to cold call somebody. Call somebody that you're not so intimidated by, like a local, maybe smaller boutique games company, just call them and ask about work, because while it's easier to fire off the email, and trust me, I've done my share of that, it is more likely to get you to stand out if you call that person or if you even go to visit them. if they will take you, just drop your portfolio off in person. Just say, hey, my name is Josh, or drop off my business card. I guess people don't have printed portfolios anymore, but that'll help to make you stand out, which is really your goal, because with the internet and the facelessness and how easy it is to send people emails, it can be very hard, I think, to stand out. And that's what you've got to do,
And I think, personality counts for a lot. That when you meet somebody, you might be like, that guy's really cool. We don't have any work for him, but make sure you save his number in the Rolodex, because on the next project, I don't know, I have a good feeling about this guy and I'd like to have him around. There's this intangible thing that you would never get with an email. It's just, oh, Josh, I don't know. I knew a Josh when I was a kid. I didn't really like him, so blah. But when you meet face to face, it can be like, oh man, I don't have any negative associations with the name Josh anymore. That guy is awesome.
Yeah, like you definitely don't want to be associated with the Josh who was just constantly farting in class. With some of the money that I saved up before I went freelance, I just went to LA. And 2 days before I went to LA, the title of my email was LA Wednesday. So they could not miss that. And I said, hey, I'm going to be in LA Wednesday. It would be great to meet up. Sure, it sounds crazy, but these people, they say, yeah, actually, if you're going to be in town, meet us on this Wednesday. And then you go in and they see that you're just another guy. And you're right. They can put a personality to that face. And then the next thing you know, they remember you the next time they have a gig and they call you up and you're working for them. It sounds crazy, but it can be that easy. But it's scary. I felt like an idiot walking into that office. Like, what am I doing here? These people don't know who I am, So you got to have a little bit of faith in yourself.
I think it, I breathe it. Look out at the rain. Where anybody sees only a drop of water rolling down the window, I see a universe of beings animated with all the passions common to physical life.
Man, I feel like we could talk for another half an hour, but we keep our show to only about 30 minutes. So is there any closing advice that you want to give to people who are in that, maybe where you were, thinking about going out on your own, but not really sure if they should do it? Or I feel like part of it is limiting your risk, which we talked about, saving up your money and producing artwork that you can show people that is really fresh and it's not, 2 years old. But is there anything else? If somebody needs to push them off the edge, and I know that going on your own is not for everybody. There is a lot of good things about working, especially if you're working at a great studio. But for those that really do want to get out, what do you have to say to those people?
Hit the phones and line up that freelance work and give yourself a deadline, a hard deadline. And you say, all right, by February 15th, I am leaving my job. And so I need to have work lined up. I need to have my personal work ready to go and my website, and I've got to have some savings put away. And if you give yourself a deadline, I think that'll help you more than anything, because if you're just saying, yeah, maybe I'll get the website together and then I'll probably do some personal stuff and I'll try to save, give yourself a finite goal and it'll make it more immediate. Mark it on your calendar, give yourself reminders on your phone, 3 months left, 2 weeks left, and put a little bit of pressure on yourself. That's what did it for me. That's really what's going to help push you out of your comfort zone if that's what you want to do and that's what you're interested in.
I love it. To wrap up, let's just talk about your new business, conceptbyjosh.com. It's your website. If somebody's listening to this and they can put A and B together that could help you, who do you want to talk to or who's interested in you? I mean, you've just said David Fincher. So if somebody's listening and you know David Fincher or David Fincher's assistant, take a look at Josh's stuff and see if you can make something happen for him. But who are you looking for specifically that we can just put it out into the universe and hopefully some good things will come back to you?
Wow. Thanks for the opportunity. I would love to be on a sci-fi feature film, anything that's near future or distant future, even, alternate reality past. Like I have yet to work on a sci-fi movie.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's weird. Actually, I take back the alternate future or alternate past. I don't want to do any more stuff. But yeah, if anyone out there working on a feature film that's got a lot of future elements in it, I mean, that's really what I'm gunning for. Or a game too. That's what I really love to do.
I feel like it's only a matter of time, like a month, 2 months, whatever. It's going to happen for sure.
I hope so.
Hey, listener, go to this website right now. Go check it out. Josh has chops to spare. Thanks so much, Josh. Josh's website is at conceptbyjosh.com. I implore you to go and check it out. You must do it. And, we talked a lot about mindset stuff today. And one of the things that we've been doing at Pencil Kings is some coaching calls. So if anybody has issues or you're concerned about stuff, I would love to hear from you. And my email is mitch@pencilkings.com. So I would look forward to speaking with you and going back and forth with email. Josh, do people email you? Do you have time to email them back, or what's your status like?
They can email me through my website. If you go to contact, that's a great way to get in touch with me. And I see all those emails that come in. I always respond. I really do, just given how much time I have. So definitely, if you have a question or anything, go to my website, go to the contact page and shoot me a line.
Awesome. And if you're that guy or gal who's sitting listening to this in the studio right now and you want to take a step into the deep end of the pool or into the ocean, I would like you to set a date and just see how it feels. You don't have to take action on it, but set a date 6 months out, like Josh was just talking about, and see how that feels and see if you're ready to do it or if you need a little bit more time, but at least take some action towards the thing that you really want to do with your life. So thanks again, Josh. And as usual, we will have notes for this podcast at pencilkings.com/Josh Viers. That'll be JOSH-VIERS. And that's a wrap. Thanks a lot, Josh.
Thanks, Mitch.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
You talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.
If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could hit the 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio and leave us a little comment about what you thought about this.